I love American cheese, and I think it is very misunderstood, and I think everybody needs to know that it's just cheese with slightly different properties. Everybody needs to understand that this is a miraculous invention, and we should talk about it. Here's what to me is mind-blowing about American cheese. American cheese has the unique ability to melt and then stay completely creamy and fluid without breaking out of its emulsion. This is a quality that's very particular to American cheese, and it's irreplaceable. The ingredient that makes American cheese super unique is an emulsifying salt, and the most frequently used one is sodium citrate. An emulsifier is any ingredient that can hold two disparate ingredients together, like fat and water. An emulsifier will hold those two things together so they stay, in the case of American cheese, smooth and creamy without splitting. American cheese is essentially cheddar, other cheeses such as Swiss cheese or Colby Jack, and sodium citrate with the addition of some kind of liquid, and it's made into the cheese that we know. The common misconception about American cheese is that it can feel plastic or fake, but good American cheese is real cheese. Real American cheese, which is made from milk and milk fat, is amazing. When I go looking for American cheese at the store, the words I'm looking for on the package are pasteurized processed American cheese. That's the one that is closest to actual like cheddar cheese or Swiss cheese or Colby Jack with the addition of a little bit of liquid and emulsifying salt. I would avoid products that have the words cheese food, imitation cheese, cheese spread, or cheese product. To me, these are indicators that the cheese isn't fully made from milk fat and contains some amount of oil. The great thing about American cheese is because it melts so well, it almost forms its own sauce because it is so creamy. So for instance, in this crunch wrap that I developed, I add a layer of American cheese at the top and bottom, and after it cooks and you cut into it, it forms its own sort of sauce that works well with all the other layers. And for these slices, I'm using the Kraft Deli Deluxe, which is usually my go-to for any situation where I need sliced cheese, just layered. With this recipe, I knew right away that I wanted American cheese, and I knew it was going to be the only cheese that would, melt with that sort of creamy, saucy texture without compromising any of the other ingredients. And then I'm going to follow it again with a layer of American cheese. And the reason I use the American cheese first, before I add the tortilla chips on top, is again, I wanted to form a barrier between the rest of the filling and the chips, so the chips have a chance to stay crunchy. And then lay a piece of foil on top, weigh this all down. Okay, so here's my crunch wrap just out of the oven. It is golden brown on top and crispy. I've let it rest as well for like about 10 minutes so that it's not too hot and holds its shape before I flip it out. Yay, perfect. Okay, I'm very excited to cut this and to see how everything is held up and how gooey the American cheese inside will be. Here's the moment we've been waiting for. Oh my God, crazy. As you can see, the American cheese melts and holds creamy. This was one of the more crazy recipes I've developed. The ability of the American cheese to stay creamy once it's melted really makes this crunch wrap, I think. So not only does American cheese help emulsify cheese sauces, but it also keeps them creamy for a very long time. I discovered this when I was developing the cheese sauce for my 7-layer skillet dip, and I tried, I think 6 or 7 times to make a cheese sauce without American cheese. And every single time it was the same result. It tasted delicious, but it was grainy, broken, separated. So on the 8th attempt, I trusted my instincts and added American cheese, and of course, it was the best cheese sauce ever. So to make my 7-layer dip, I have my refried bean mixture. I have everything that I need to make my cheese sauce. So I add my water first. If I added just the American cheese to the pot, it would melt, but it would also be quite thick. And I wanted it to be fluid and saucy to meld well with the rest of the dip. To which I add a little bit of salt, ground cumin, adobo sauce from a can of chipotles. This is American cheese that I got from the deli section of the supermarket, and I shredded it myself. A lot of people don't know this, but you could walk up to the deli counter where you get your, sliced cheese, and you can ask them to cut you a block of American cheese, and they happily will. It has a very low melting point, American cheese, so it melts pretty rapidly. So I'm going to turn this heat off, and the residual heat should be enough to melt the pepper jack cheese. If I were to have made the cheese sauce with just pepper jack cheese, it would have broken and it would separate and turn very clumpy. And it is a little bit thinner than one would think. That's just because it's very hot, and as it sits for a few minutes, it'll thicken up and be perfectly creamy and spoonable. I'm going to top it with all of my other ingredients for a little bit of spice, and then I'll finish it off with a bit of cilantro. As this begins to cool down, the American cheese sauce will thicken just a little bit, but it will stay creamy, and when you dip it with a tortilla chip, it won't break your chip, like it wouldn't have congealed, so it's very easy to scoop. And this is the American cheese and the sodium citrate keeping the emulsion together and keeping it smooth and creamy for a long time. Another great quality about American cheese is its ability to remain fluid after it's melted. And this is because of the sodium citrate again, because it denatures the proteins in the cheese. Even upon cooling, they never quite bond the same ever again, so the cheese remains fluid for a long time. And I think mac and cheese is a great example to illustrate that property of American cheese. So I have some noodles cooking here in milk. I like to add the American cheese first because it's like an entrance almost. It melts first and stabilizes the sauce so that when I add the other cheese, it won't break. I use a combination of cheeses, and this is something that I think is a valuable lesson when using American cheese, because American cheese, the properties of its meltability are commendable, but sometimes the flavor can be one-dimensional. So using it in a combination with another cheese which is much stronger, something like an aged cheddar, really helps to balance the best of both worlds. The American cheese essentially keeps things fluid and creamy, and the cheddar cheese will bring flavor. And to finish it off, I'm going to add a little bit of mustard just for flavor and a little bit of paprika for color. This is ready for me to plate up. As I'm spooning this in, I can see that the cheese sauce is coating the noodles very evenly. I know because of the American cheese that it is not going to firm up and coagulate, so it'll stay creamy for a while. Who doesn't like a creamy mac and cheese? The great thing about using American cheese for mac and cheese is it gets you in this perfect in-between spot between the convenience of boxed mac and cheese and the flavor of a more complicated homemade version. And the other bonus of using American cheese is the sauce stays extremely silky and fluid for a very long time. Why is American cheese the perfect cheese for a grilled cheese sandwich? Is because its melting point is so low, and when you toast bread on a skillet, it doesn't need a long time. So by using a low melting point cheese such as American, the cheese melts by the time the bread is toasted. For a grilled cheese, I think, it makes sense to use sliced American cheese, and this one is the Kraft Deli Deluxe. You certainly can add a slice of a sharper, more flavorful cheese, such as a cheddar, in addition to the American cheese. I would caution against using just like a cheddar cheese. I don't think it will melt as well. The result will be a little bit stringy and broken, perhaps even oily and greasy. I would always use another cheese in combination with American cheese. Okay, I'm looking for the bread to be golden brown and toasty, and the cheese to begin melting and sort of coming up the sides. And here's a grilled cheese made with American cheese. Oh my God. You can really see how gooey and even the melt is. An exceptional specimen of a grilled cheese sandwich. You can see how the cheese is melted evenly. There are no pools of oil or grease, and it's just a creamy melt from edge to edge. Once American cheese is melted, it also sort of holds all of the ingredients together. So in the case of these make-ahead breakfast sandwiches, for instance, I am going to lay a slice of American cheese on top. And so I have my egg, the bacon, cheese, and I've closed the top of the English muffin. And now I am going to wrap them up and hold them in the freezer until I'm ready to eat them. And when it's time to reheat them, the cheese will melt and sort of trickle down and hold the bacon and the egg together. These breakfast sandwiches have been in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes just for them to warm through. So I'm excited to open one and see how it looks inside. You can see here that the cheese is effectively holding down the bacon. So when you go to bite it, the bacon won't just like slide out of your sandwich. The American cheese here is essentially creating like a sticky network that binds the bacon to the bread. In conclusion, American cheese deserves your respect. As a big believer of American cheese, I implore you to go and find a good quality American cheese, make the right choices when you're at the store, and you will be surprised at just how good, useful, and miraculous American cheese is.